Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, if you've spent any time interacting with large language models lately, you've probably felt it. That slightly unsettling feeling. I mean, they're dazzling, right? They generate responses so thoughtful, so fluent, and so aware of the context that they give off this incredibly powerful illusion of being a conscious living species. It literally feels like there is a mind in there, reading your words and carefully pondering its response. But today, we're going to break down how AI actually thinks in simple terms. We're going to peel back the layers of that illusion and look directly at the math. So, does AI actually think? That's the million-dollar question we're tackling today. Because as humans, when we read a beautifully crafted paragraph, we just naturally assume a structured, conscious thought process created it. But when researchers finally decided to pry open the AI black box to see if there's an actual cognitive process happening inside, well, they discovered something fascinating and honestly fundamentally alien. The reality hidden inside these models is both startlingly sophisticated and incredibly strange. All right, let's dive right in. To really grasp how alien this intelligence is, we have to start with the foundational reality of what these models actually do. As technology expert Bernard Marr puts it so perfectly, think of it as a super smart parrot. They generate text based on patterns, not comprehension. These tools are, at their absolute core, incredibly powerful language predictors. They are mimicking understanding, rather than consciously thinking about what they're actually saying. To see why, we've got to look at how they consume data. An AI isn't sitting down and cozying up with a book the way you or I do. Instead, it breaks all text down into what are called tokens. Now, a token might be a whole word, part of a word, or even just a piece of punctuation. When you type a prompt, the AI translates your words into these tokens and then plays a high-stakes, purely statistical game of guess the next token, based on billions of parameters. It is literally just predicting the most mathematically probable next token, one at a time, to build a response. So the crucial point here is the massive difference in the underlying mechanics. Think about human comprehension. When we speak or write, we start with an intent, a meaning we want to get across, and we use logic to select our words. But with AI prediction, it has no true understanding, no long-term human memory, and no inherent meaning. It simply strings together tokens that its massive training data says should, probabilistically, go together. Moving on to Section 1, Mapping Meaning with Math. Let's look at how machines understand words without actually reading. Now, you might be wondering, if AI is essentially just a giant statistical calculator guessing the next token, how does it seem to know what a word actually means? How does it know a dog is an animal and not a vehicle? The answer lies in something called word embeddings. To an AI, a word isn't a dictionary definition. It's a coordinate in a massive, multidimensional mathematical space. During training, the AI tracks which words frequently show up together and then assigns numerical vectors to these tokens. For example, if we map this out, guitar and bass have very similar vector coordinates because they share similar contexts, whereas car and bicycle sit in a completely different area of that mathematical space. The AI doesn't know what a guitar sounds like, but the math tells it that a guitar is semantically close to a bass and very, very far away from a bicycle. And this spatial math leads to something absolutely mind-bending. When researchers at Anthropic used a kind of AI microscope to trace the internal pathways of their model Claude, they discovered it doesn't actually think in English, or French, or Chinese. Because it relies entirely on these vector coordinates, it operates in a universal, language-agnostic conceptual space, a language of thought. Whether you ask it, what is the opposite of small in Urdu or in Spanish, the exact same underlying neural pathways fire for the abstract concepts of smallness and largeness. The model just acts as a linguistic filter at the very end to output the language you asked for. All right, Section 2, the Transformer Brain. Let's look at the engine behind the illusion. So we've got this multi-dimensional map, but what's actually processing it? Let's break down this transformer engine. After tokenization, the data hits a crucial breakthrough called the attention mechanism. Now, instead of reading your prompt word by word like older AI used to do, transformers look at all the tokens in your prompt simultaneously. They calculate how every single word relates to every other word, instantly capturing long-range context. Then it passes all of that through the feed-forward network, which is essentially the model's factual memory banks, to calculate that all-important next token prediction. And this exact underlying engine is what powers even more complex setups, like autonomous AI agents. An AI agent doesn't just answer a prompt and go to sleep. It operates in a continuous loop. First, it perceives, gathering context from its environment or text stream.
Then it reasons, using that transformer engine and its vector maps to update its internal state against a specific goal. And finally, it acts, executing a response or an action. It is the exact same fundamental math, just applied iteratively to interact with the world. Which brings us to Section 3, glitches, lies, and hallucinations. Basically, what happens when the math behaves strangely.
Because this intelligence is built entirely on statistical pattern matching, things can get weird, very weird. When you scale these models up to billions of parameters, they develop emergent abilities, behaviors that just spontaneously appear without anyone explicitly programming them. Take something as basic as simple arithmetic. These models are trained on text, not numbers, right? So how do they add 36 plus 59 and get 95? Well, Anthropic researchers found that Claude doesn't use the logical carrying method we learned in grade school. Instead, it uses these bizarre parallel calculations. One part of the network approximates 30 plus 60 to get 90. Simultaneously, another completely different part precisely calculates the last digits, 6 plus 9 equals 15. Then these tracks converge to output 95. It's a completely alien hybrid of estimation and precision. But here is where things get kind of alarming. When researchers actually asked the AI how it solved that math problem, it confidently explained that it used the human carrying method. It lied. And it didn't lie maliciously, it lied because the model has one set of circuits for doing math and a completely different set of circuits for explaining it based on human textbooks. The AI essentially acts like a people pleaser, a sycophant. Its underlying programming pushes it to prioritize generating a coherent, human-approved response over accurately reporting its own internal state. And this same sycophantic pressure is exactly what drives hallucinations. We usually think of hallucinations as the AI just throwing out wild guesses. But researchers discovered something amazing. Claude actually has a default circuit that tells it to say, "I don't know," when it lacks information. A hallucination is actually a mechanical misfire. A competing circuit representing known entities accidentally activates and literally inhibits, turns off, the "I don't know" circuit. The overwhelming pressure to predict the next coherent word forces the AI to just output a confident falsehood. Now, what's really fascinating is that this isn't just happening on the fly. This rhyming experiment from Anthropic proves the AI is doing way more than just reacting in real time. When researchers asked Claude to finish a couplet ending with "grab it," the AI naturally queued up the word rabbit. But researchers secretly injected the vector concept for green into the system mid-process. Instantly, Claude abandoned the rhyme and output "his hunger colored everything green." This proves the AI actually plans entire passages in advance using hidden structural blueprints. It's balancing multiple constraints, like rhyme, grammar, and injected meaning, all at the exact same time before generating a single word.
Okay, Section 4, opening the black box. Let's talk about mechanistic interpretability. We've seen how alien its cognition is, so how do we make sure it actually stays safe?
Well, mechanistic interpretability is essentially the systematic study of what's actually happening inside these neural networks. Instead of just treating the AI as a black box where we feed it prompts and blindly judge the output, scientists are using techniques like circuit tracing. Think of it as an AI microscope. They're literally reverse engineering the computational structures to map exactly which artificial neurons fire when the AI processes a specific concept. The ultimate goal here is to align these highly complex minds with actual human intentions. But as you can imagine, mapping this is incredibly difficult. One of the absolute biggest roadblocks is a phenomenon called superposition. See, an AI doesn't just have one neuron for one concept. To be efficient, it packs thousands of overlapping features into a limited number of neurons. And this leads to polysemanticity, which is really just a fancy way of saying a single neuron multitasks. It might fire for the concept of a dog, but also for financial banking, entirely depending on the overlapping signals. Untangling these overlapping radio signals at the massive emergent scale of a frontier language model is computationally exhausting. Which brings us to a vital takeaway from all of this. As author Sachin Ka-Bordoloi points out, the real risk isn't AI that thinks like us. It is humans who think AI is conscious. The danger doesn't actually lie in the AI's capabilities, but in our psychological projection. Because the simulation of human cognition is just so dazzling, we forget that we are talking to a highly complex, language-agnostic, mathematical engine that doesn't actually know anything in the human sense.
And that leaves us with a pretty provocative question to wrap up this explainer. We're constantly pushing the boundaries of scale, adding billions of parameters, and unlocking emergent abilities that literally no one explicitly programmed. So, as these language-agnostic, multidimensional spaces grow increasingly vast and entangled,
We have to ask, will our microscopic mapping techniques be able to keep pace? Will we ever truly understand the AI minds we are building? Or will the illusion eventually outgrow our ability to peer behind the curtain? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the tech around you.